Over with people like that on these guys.
Matter of fact, I'm going to put the computer screen
Zoom
down.
at all.
So I don't
No,
get-
it doesn't.
This is so
No, halfway.
so strange.
Hey, they're really great. They're
Ready to
around.
go?
Yeah.
One.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the July 15th Ipswich School Committee to order. Thank you all for coming. I hope everyone's enjoying the summer. It's the first time that we will not be reading the governor's proclamation about Zoom calls, which is pretty exciting. We are broadcast on ICAM, but no longer on Zoom. And we welcome the public back to meetings. So welcome back. Thank you. And so that's exciting. I'd like, I guess, I don't know, I'll read the mission statement if that's okay tonight. The Ipswich Public Schools aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice in demonstrating competency. Announcements. Excuse me. The school committee retreat will be held on August 10th at 5 p.m. at Turner Hill. And that's the only announcement I have tonight. Does anyone else have any other announcements? Okay. I have to look at our agenda again, and we have one citizens' comment section, but that doesn't mean if citizens are in the audience that we will not hear from them every once in a while. But are there any citizens' comments? Hearing and seeing none. Special acknowledgements, Dr. Blake.
I'd just like to welcome all of our new staff members and administrators to the district. Everybody is on board as of July 6th.
That's great, though.
We're pretty excited.
And tonight in person, I'd like to welcome Eric Stella,
Thank you.
who is our new Director of Finance, excuse me. And welcome. We're really excited to have you here, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great, welcome. So, paying grant committee member approval. We have Jen Donahue's asked to be reappointed to the paying grant committee. She's been very active in the community, and I think she'll make an excellent representative on the paying grant.
Move to support.
Second.
Moved by Hugh, second by Greg. Is there any further discussion?
I've been on the paying committee for a few years, and she's terrific.
Yeah, does her homework on top. Great. Thank you, Bob.
Is she a business representative?
Yes.
And she's in the business of kids. So that's pretty good, too. Fabulous. All right. So if there's nothing further, moved and second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. No more roll calls either. Or,
It's gonna go faster.
I was thankful.
this is all very strange. Excuse me.
It is.
I'd like to turn over the high school handbook changes to Dr. Blake. And
Okay. So
we
in your packets this evening, online, were the proposed changes to the high school handbook, student parent handbook. Everything that's highlighted in yellow is changed. And so I can just quickly walk through, we're on page 15. Excuse me. There's changes in the dress code. This is actually the dress code that we've been going by, but last year's handbook still had the old language in it. That's the first change. The next change is over on page 22, the honor code. You can see all of the new language is, well, it's all in yellow, but you can see the new language is bolded and at the beginning, and then all of the language that's being replaced regarding honesty and academic integrity follows that. So you can see the changes there. Just some wording changes regarding inappropriate material, display of sexually explicit, vulgar, hateful, or otherwise, or other language or imagery inconsistent with the school's mission is not permitted at school. Crossed out otherwise inappropriate material and inappropriate. You can see that change as well. And then personal appearance over on page 29, we're removing that language. And essentially was the old dress code. And then over on page 40, there's sports replacement that we've added in, and that has to do with, the rest of it has to do with numeration of pages, and that'll be inserted once we have the final copy. We know exactly how many pages the handbook is going to be.
I don't know what that one means.
Yep, so sports replacement, we have a program, if you go back, all the way back to actually the last change, you can see on page 59 and 60, you can see the sports replacement description
Okay.
and the non-school activities.
Okay.
So it's just a cross-reference there in the earlier section. Okay, and then the senior privilege, which is something that the school committee and school council approved previously, that is now inserted into the handbook. And then again, the last changes are the graduation requirements and the sports replacement description that were included. These changes were made by a committee at the school and approved by the school council, from what I understand. Is that correct, Bob?
Yes.
Any questions or?
I'm really happy with the elimination of the personal appearance section and the changes to the dress code. I think it's appropriate and about time in my time, but to the middle school as well.
Yep. Agreed.
Were high school students involved in the drafting and?
I believe they were, and they're on the school council as well.
Of the dress code?
Of just the changes to the
The
handbook?
changes in the handbook?
Yes, the school council, the senior policy, the senior, they're very involved with, and also the stuff around academic honesty. One of the concerns was that, they really wanted to be explicit, like, what is this? So that you don't, there were examples brought up of, kids getting to college and not having realized what they were doing was an honors code infraction and getting booted. And they said, we really want this to be very clear. This is what academic dishonesty is, this is how you avoid it, just really spelled out.
And the changes to the personal appearance, that being all taken out, that in fact was done last year with students on the committee.
I should say the kids being booted from college were not our students. They were just examples of that happening to kids, so.
Bob and I have a long history of raging against dress code issues. So
Amen.
it's about time.
Really, I would have loved to watch that debate.
And it's been a big issue in the middle school too, so.
Yeah.
It's been a big issue in the middle school for a long
This year
time.
is-
Yep.
Having had kids sent home
Little
probably
girls.
a dozen years ago.
Having boys, I don't have that problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Only applied to girls. apparently.
Exactly.
Right.
Not anymore.
So give folks a few minutes to finish taking a look at it, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. I would ask for a vote on that this evening to accept it. If there are no changes, this way we can get it to the printer and have it for kids when we come back to school.
Mine's just an anecdotal question. How did the senior privileges go this year? I know that's a question for Jonathan Mitchell.
I can tell you.
From what I understand, it went well.
Really well.
Yeah, it went very well.
And I think more than half the class, possibly as close to 2/3 or 3/4, were eligible and applied. And the students were very particular about not wanting to have it be an academic thing. They wanted it not to be just, if you have a certain GPA, they want it to be inclusive. If your attendance is good, if you're an active citizen in the community. And so they had a lot of people take advantage of it, and it went well. We were very excited with it.
Great.
Is anyone here who's written or been part of the writing of some of these, academic honor code piece? Any of us on that? I don't know. There's one thing that says distributing an examination from an unauthorized source prior to an examination.
I know, I was in the meetings when we were talking about it, and they did go over each piece and each point.
Yeah.
So, and there, that has parents, teachers, students.
A lot of kids use Quizlets and old tests and other things from online to study and prepare for tests. And sometimes those can be predictive of new tests, and they kind of trouble for that in the past, even if they are academic sources from this institution. I don't know what that means, that's all. I don't know if that means that you can't use other sources for preparing for exams.
Well, one of the other things that people talked about, because one of the parents in particular was very concerned, because it comes down very hard on kids.
Yeah, no.
And it was discussed at length and made very clear, the teachers know if this is a kid who might have just stumbled into this, or if this is a kid where this is a repeated problem, and so it's looked at on a case-by-case basis and addressed individually. So, if it were a case where somebody was using Quizlet or something like that, I think they would take that into account. And I think they're thinking more, your brother took this class 2 years ago when he kept his tests.
But that's not spelled out.
I don't know. That just is. I don't remember exactly the discussion.
Because I came from a college where they kept old exams as a study guide.
A lot of
And you're supposed to study from the old tests, because that's the best way to prepare for exams. And similarly, if you have, for example, you get the book with the author's, test answers and so forth, you can review those. The obvious one is all the AP exams. Those questions repeat, and you can study the old AP exams and be ready for the new one, because they literally write out the rubric for the answer key for the questions, and they're very similar year to year. Obviously, in a lot of the AP tests the classes use AP questions, so using those resources isn't cheating. It's just understanding what you're trying to be tested on, and then they come up. So I still don't know how that would be addressed. Old tests from the school, old tests from similar sources, old tests from textbooks. I just don't want kids to get tripped up by preparing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that. So I don't really understand what the distributing examination from an unauthorized source actually means.
I don't remember, because I think we were talking about this back in January. It's a little fuzzy.
6 years ago in January.
But I know, as I said, the teachers were very concerned that that each kid was looked at individually, and that they were addressing it appropriately, and not
Doesn't this speak to the exam they're about to take?
Yeah. So
Not like a study guide questions for all
right. So
exams.
let's just say you're taking a prior exam on Civil War AP US history, and they're going to give you prior question from the AP US history test as one of your questions on the test. Those are all public. All of those are publicly available. If you look through and read those and look at the rubrics,
I think that's an authorized source.
right.
I think
Is that spelled
taking
out?
it out of the teacher's file cabinet is not an authorized source.
Of the exam to be
Yeah.
given.
Right. So I understand that as bad. I just don't know what the distribution would be.
You might be right, though. You might want to throw in a couple
I don't even know
lines.
if you can make examples. That's all. It's just internet gives kids
Right.
an inordinate ability to search for, take prior tests the teachers have generated,
Yep.
identify the sources by which they're getting their questions, because most of them take their questions from other places, and study the next section.
Mhm.
They all do that. And I don't know if that's illegal or not. I'm almost out of the game, so I'm not thinking about my kids. I'm just thinking about what they do to prepare both in high school and college. Because they look at sources that are equivalent. They don't just look at the textbook and read it.
Mhm.
They look for tests.
How do we make sure?
Is there a proposal here?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how they address that particular issue. Or is this how you address it?
I almost need to define what an authorized.
Unauthorized
Yeah, I don't know.
source.
So a kid gets pulled up on X, Y, or Z. I guess they'll have to. It gives them flexibility, I just don't know how specific it is. What let kids study the way they study. They study differently than they used to because of the internet and the resources and the search capabilities they have. I mean, you put in 5 words from a test question and you get the answer. Or a homework question, you get the answer.
I want to go back to college now.
You know?
I
Or
don't.
not.
No. How do we make sure that students have reviewed this?
Have what?
Reviewed the
They have to
handbook?
sign it.
They have to
They have to
sign
sign it.
something saying they have.
Okay.
And the, I think the parents do as well.
I think the
Page
unauthorized.
64.
Okay. I think the unauthorized source probably does need to be defined, but I wouldn't want to hold up.
Yeah, I don't mind leaving it as is because it's going to be subject to interpretation. I'm interested to see what it means.
But that
Good
could be.
feedback for, they look at this every year, right?
Every year, we have to sign off
So
on
it's
the
be good
change.
feedback for potentially next year.
Is that something we could throw an asterisk in and ask them to come up with a definition of unauthorized source that could be at
Just a
least
few
codified
examples.
somewhere?
I think the flexibility might be what the individual teachers say is not an authorized source, right? So a teacher might say, you can't use your sister's old test, or you can't use the old tests from the textbook that are online.
Well, but
I don't know if they can
it
do
says
that.
distributing. So I mean,
Right.
they're probably like,
Can you
it's-
use them
if
for a
you want
study
to study
guide?
from your sister's test, it's fine. If you want to give that to everybody in the class, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a
No,
little.
Yeah, I mean-
I don't see that the issue.
Well, it says
I think the-
distributing an examination.
Yeah, no, I think the issue is I think this reference is pulling a test to be taken.
But it's under the heading of collusion, so collusion starts at the bottom of page 22. I think
Right.
it should be started on 23 to make it a little clearer. So I think it is referring to a bunch of kids getting together and, colluding to cheat on the test by distributing
Old test?
old tests.
Like I
Yeah.
can tell you, if you're taking an AP class, you can look through every old AP class and look at every question on the Civil War and save it. And you look at these 5, I'll look at these 5, and then share them around.
I mean, but that's also studying, like that's a
It's
study group.
It's a great way. It's the best way to study.
Yeah, you're learning.
The rubrics are literally written out point by point for how they grade the essays. It's really a terrific
But
way to
that's-
understand how to do a DBQ.
But therein lies part of the difference, big difference between grading an essay that you still have to write on your own versus the multiple choice test
Yeah.
where.
A,
you know,
B, A, B,
yeah.
Just memorize
Right.
this.
So
Yeah,
would it,
string
could
of
it be,
letters.
instead of unauthorized source, an unpublished source? Because I'm assuming an AP test would be published through some,
I don't want to wordsmith it so much as just bring it out as a point that may be subject to interpretation.
yeah, I
And
could,
maybe it should be under the cheating section. And that's where we're looking for that.
that's a good point.
And that would be under the use of unauthorized electronic notebooks for assignments. That's fine.
I'll share that with John.
Yeah, just a thing. So move to support.
Second.
Moved by Hugh, second by Emily. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Keith, why don't you pull your chair up into the
Yeah,
middle here? So
you
we
don't
can-
have to sit on the
Right
box.
on the box.
No, not on the box.
Stand on it.
Where's the best place at?
Anyway,
Right there.
just anywhere,
It's
just so
great.
everybody can see, that's all.
It's nice to welcome, Keith Morgan here tonight.
Can we turn the spotlight
It's
on?
cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see them in 3 dimensions.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
really is. We're tighter on the tables now. It's going to be great having a student rep sitting at that chair right there, because I really felt badly last year.
So at our last school committee meeting back in June, when the final discussions and vote were taken on the paying grants, one grant did not receive approval by the paying grant committee, and there were a lot of questions from the school committee regarding that grant, and it's around the proposal for a new website, and the initiative to get that started. And so our discussion at the last school committee meeting was just lots of questions around what exactly does that mean, and are we going to end up with a website or something else? What are the costs involved? And so we asked Keith to come back this evening just to have a conversation with the school committee, perhaps review the grant, answer any other questions that folks had, and I asked Keith to just talk a little bit about the savings and what the sort of the implementation plan and what the potential savings are moving forward.
And give us an enhancement and enrichment as well.
Yeah, so maybe one of the best ways to say this is we know we have problems with the current website, but we have enough feedback to know that there's something wrong with it. To use an analogy, it's a horse and buggy. We know we need a new car, but the things we don't know are, does it need air conditioning? Do we want heated seats? All the particulars, right? And so we need to flesh those out. And it can't just be IT doing that, because there are just so many things we don't understand. So we need to involve Tom with athletics, Jerry with the arts. We want to get all the different constituents involved. We need students, teachers, families, even partners in the community. Until we have that feedback and generate what's called business requirements, we don't really know exactly what our solution is going to look like. So because of that, in the pitch, basically, my guess is, just from doing project management for a while, we're going to have one of three choices. We're going to have sort of a bare bones, base level choice, a mid level choice, and a high end. Pinto, a Ford, and Cadillac. The pricing you saw was for the Cadillac, because I saw no reason to dial back our option for excellence when we pitch. So to give you an idea and compare like for like, for a bare bones replacement of the website, the cost would be pretty close to what we do now. In other words, the website right now, we pay $5,000 for the website annually. And the cost for a new website annually would be somewhere around $2 to $3 per student, which is roughly the same amount. Now, we also pay about $4,000 for the messaging that we get. These Friday messages at 4:30. If we were to buy a $10,000 solution that also wrapped up messaging in there, well, now, we reallocate the $9,000 and add another $1,000, and we've got a like-for-like solution. If we happen to buy what I would call the mid-level solution, that might also include workflows. Right now, we pay $5,000 for workflows. Folks signing up for athletics, folks signing up for EDP, that's $5,000 on the parent community side. We pay $4,000 for internal workflows. If we had a solution for $20,000 that includes workflows and communication, well, those are actually kind of like for like as well. So the prices aren't as wild as they first seem. And then for your higher level solutions, the $30,000 solution, you have all the things I just mentioned, plus probably portals, where a student can log in, or an employee can log in, and it's one-stop shopping for that kind of stuff. ADA compliance checking, well, they'll make sure everything we post is compliant. Right now, we have to do that ourselves. And also, translation. I don't know if any of you try to use the French translator on the site we have now. It comes up with perfect English. So these are things that, we need to address one way or another, and it's going to be a cost to that. So in that pitch, the idea was accommodating for all of the possible requirements that the groups would come up with, the working group, the stakeholders, and basically the executive sponsors. So that's where those numbers came from. If we decided we wanted to dial it back, or the staging approach, we could do that too. The bottom line is here, you know, we're gonna be prudent with it. You know, the whole idea of stewardship. If it doesn't make sense to do something, we're not gonna go ahead and put money into it. So hopefully that addresses some of the questions, but if you have specifics, I'd be happy to take those.
Google Classroom, Aspen, things like that, would all that all be integrated into a future website? That would all be something you'd fold in, would kids log into their account in the school that day and go about their classes
Well, that's
virtually, simultaneously?
It's a business requirement. I would be stunned if when we got that group together, somewhere in there, single sign-on and cohesion wasn't part of what we were looking for the solution. Versus going here for your grades for this, going here for your grades for tests, going here for contacting sports. One of the things we're looking to do is have an all-in-one solution that basically represents the excellence we have in all of this.
So that's the portals, right?
Yeah, and part of it is you can wear multiple hats. Now, again, these are business requirements, and I wouldn't want to speak for everybody, but if somebody happened to be a student athlete and, you know, they were also part of the school committee, they would wear both hats. When they log in, that solution would know who they were and provide them appropriate things. Same thing with parents and teachers.
So it sounds like worst case scenario, we're essentially break even under any of these, cost-wise, right? I mean, when you're folding in some of the things we're paying for separately.
Yeah,
With
and
the-
in all
with the-
honesty, you could look at the requirements and say, you know, what we have now can probably solve those requirements if we tried it in a slightly different way,
Mhm.
use it in a different way. My guess is the answer to that would be no. I think Laura would agree with that. But I think, you know, the first thing is you start with the requirements. What is the problem we're looking to solve? Then you find the solutions.
For the communications we do with our, like ELL families, would that be something that we could, I don't know how we're doing it now when things need to be translated or making sure they're getting, you know, information at the same time as other families, but is that something that could also be incorporated into this?
It could be, and that would also be one of the requirements. When you get to those sorts of solutions, the ones that package in translation and the portals that you're talking to your mid to high range, your Fords to Cadillacs. You're buying functionality we don't currently have. I can tell you at that point, it's not a break even, the cost is going to go up.
Mhm.
But there's a benefit.
Right.
Well, in
That's the
some
enrichment.
cases, there are also legal requirements too. You have to be able to translate.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So we do that by, like a person actually does that, a person's paying it.
So one of the challenges I have is I've been in the committee for a long time, and I remember when the internet came out and we first, but literally I think this is the fourth time I've been told since I've been in the committee that our website's horse and buggy and we need to upgrade it and give us $10,000 and we'll give you a new, better website. And it comes out and it's not ipswichschools.org anymore, now it's IPSK12 and it's got orange and black in it instead of just, you know, generic type, but it's always seemingly like 10 years behind when it comes out. Each time we've redone it and spent money on it, and we've still had like 10 hacked on, added on systems that add on to it afterwards. So I just don't know how it's part of the natural mission for it to evolve over time as part of things instead of having these every 5-year redos. And I don't know what the last time it was redone, but it seems relatively recent.
I'm going to guess 2014.
Yeah, it's probably about 5 years, 6 years.
But maybe that's just the way it is, that
Yeah.
it's 7 or 8
Yeah, it
years. I
might
mean,
be
think
that
about
that's-
how far technology's come since the internet came out. I mean, I've done this
Yeah, it's
before,
every-
four
yeah,
iterations
years,
doesn't seem that crazy.
Since
It's
COVID
25
happened,
years,
think
you know?
about what happened. I mean, in the past year, with technology.
COVID really brought this to light, actually. The number of different places we had to steer people and the difficulty in helping them during the time. That really brought this to light. You know, and one of the reasons we have to involve everyone is because from an IT perspective, you know, we're not, you know, directors of communication, right? We don't know, you can't use this color or anything like that, but we know enough to find the people that do know that stuff, right? And one of the reasons we want to bring everybody in is because I think it's possible not everyone has a voice at the table. And And so I'd like to make sure that we do
Keith, I was wondering, I see you have your papers. Do you have the chart that you showed, which showed the hits per month, comparing the two? Did you show these guys already, or?
I haven't showed, unless they were in the presentation, but it should be, I think it might be in, well, anyway,
Yeah.
I'll tell it,
Yeah.
I'll tell you anyway. The peak we've ever had in the history of our website was 5,000 hits in March of 2020. It had to happen because we
sure.
had nowhere else to go. For schools that are like us, same size, in comparison schools, they average 5,000 hits every month. We average is somewhere around 750.
So we're not using our website.
Yeah.
No one else.
But I mean, that's what I was saying. It's like Hamilton Wenham. Obviously, the website is, it's easy to use and people are using it.
Mhm.
You know, and I was like, that is great.
Half of those are mine looking at policies.
What's your, the website annual fee? What are you paying now in total?
Just the website is a little over $5,000.
So this goes from 5,000 to 30,000.
Well, again, if we're replacing the website, Ryan's notifications that go out, and our workflow system, we're already dropping 20,000
Okay,
annually on this.
thank you, because I had 13, okay, fine.
Part of this is an assessment to see what other systems we might be able to drop in addition to those.
Yeah, I think there are probably some economies of scale we could leverage too. You know, the type of vendors we'd be looking at, you know, when they provide one function to one school, it becomes available to everyone that they work with for a slightly cheaper cost.
My question is, I can't imagine Ipswich is that unique in our needs. I mean, we're not a huge district, we're not a regional district, you know, other towns have sports and reporting grades online and all that stuff. So are there other districts that you know of that have, you know, maybe Hamilton Wenham or other districts that have kind of what we need and we feel confident that there are systems out there that can handle all of our?
Yeah, Hamilton Wenham, just by comparison, we looked at the company that they use, and one of the companies that a lot of schools use. School Wires is another one, and so there's a lot of options out there, including CMS for schools and stuff. We're not doing anything that unique. It just, I don't think anyone's really brought it together here. It's more been, I guess, what I would call quadrant one driven. We need to solve this problem. Put something up there somewhere on the website there. I'd like to take a step back and maybe be a little more intentional.
How long will it take you to implement and get this thing up and running, do you think?
We're 2 months behind the original timeline. One of the things we were really hoping to do is to be able to grab time from faculty during the summer, because I think it's important that they have input on this. So we're not going to have that, but we could probably have it up and running by next summer. I think you're looking, traditionally, it's going to be about a 12-month implementation. The heavy lifting up front. Trust me, we will be the weak link here. These people, they do this all the time. They're going to come to us and ask us whether it should be orange or blue, and we're going to take 4.5 months to get them out. So these folks, they will not be the problem. They will be us.
So just out of curiosity, and this, so I know that if we were to approve this grant, we would be over the allotment. But we do have that money in this?
Yeah, so we returned a significant amount of money back to the trust, 340,000, I believe.
Okay.
So we would just, I guess, vote to approve movement of any excess funds needed from what we returned and allocate it to this year's grants.
Do we know what the difference would be?
It was not significant. I had it on there, but,
It's like 7,000 or something.
what?
It's not like 7,000 or something.
It
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
a big number.
Okay, not much at all.
You have to look
So
at.
Keith, years ago, I went to the Google Classroom conference.
Mhm.
I went a couple of days, and I know they have comprehensive solutions for school districts.
Yep.
Is that something that we could just roll into just be Google School, since we do the Google Classroom already? It's like $5 a student a year to do the Rolls Royce of that whole thing.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at too. We're already heavily invested in Google.
I know.
So Google Enterprise and their solutions would be one that we would have to look at just because they're part. For the same reason, we'd have to look at our
Just
current
remember,
solution provided to
Six,
system
seven,
Six, seven.
who was the total number? Do you remember what the grant was? What was available for us?
Yeah, we'll be looking at those as well.
Do you remember the grant amount? Do you remember the grant amount?
77.6.
Oh, it's right here.
No, I know that.
Oh, the total.
But
Oh, the total.
the total available for paint.
656.
What's that?
$656,454. And the total.
656, what?
454.
All
So
right.
the total funds requested, if this one got approved, would have been $670,994.
Yeah.
That's included.
Yep, so we have to do, there's a little math.
14?
Because I'm trying to beat you. $14,537. I think
We'd have to ask that.
we'd have to grab that from the 340,000.
47, yeah.
47,000 that was returned.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an exact example of why we have that buffer fund for grants that we want to support, and that we couldn't, and that we otherwise couldn't, or we'd have to reduce the grant.
Can I just bring up what I recall from our discussion at our last meeting on this grant was that the Payne Grant Committee didn't approve it because it wasn't student-facing enough, or didn't
I
really
think
fit
they
the.
felt
is
it,
that
I think
correct?
it was the whole innovative and, it's the innovative and.
Enrichment and
Like directly impact
enhancement.
student, or it was kind of,
Yeah.
but then we had a good discussion about it, because I remember I brought up the point that, well, the childcare one doesn't really have direct
Yeah.
student impact either, and we approved that, so, but it makes staff members who have kids in childcare happy, which happy
Mhm.
staff.
And
So, we can make that same argument for
Well, I wish
website makes
Amy could
families
agree with
happy.
you. Amy really does a great job of articulating, much better than I could. But I think if you look at the overall student experience, right? I think there'll be no way they can't benefit from this. First of all, the parents will just know that things that are going on in the classroom are with them. And from a security perspective, the fact that they would have to log in to get access to data would be people put in the right places today. There's a lot of places that I think you could really benefit. And the students would peripherally and maybe even directly. It's just, my role isn't such that I'm good at seeing that play out. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where Amy's great at that.
Right. And it kind of makes the whole school community better informed,
Mm-hmm.
more satisfied.
it enhances and enriches the entire district.
Right. Yeah, information's more accessible.
Jeff?
So, I feel comfortable with the annual subscription fees eventually being picked up by the budget, by the standard budget, but I wonder, in the past, how have we handled development of a rollout of a new website? To me, that seems something that should be in the operating budget and plan for, like, updated security and things like that. I just don't see them being, something that the grant money should be for. So I'm kind of struggling with that.
I'm actually pretty sure 2014, we did do it out of the grant.
Okay. I mean, I tend to agree with you. The fact that a rebrand every 8 years, factoring that in going forward probably does make sense. It just isn't. And there are always some options for that. For instance, depending on how you have a relationship with the vendors, you can wrap the launch cost up over a 5-year plan and split that cost up in the operating budget too. There are options. We just didn't have it.
You know, we started our technology hardware platform. I'm saying the wrong terminology. I'm starting right there. But we got to one-to-one technology in the school with the Payne grant. So I'd say that was, you could argue your statement on that as well, Jeff, that, geez, we should have done this in the budget. And we did supplement, we do now have the refresh of technology in our budgets. So we wouldn't expect you to come for an annual fee, for a Payne grant approval for an annual fee using that budget.
And we did have those discussions in the Payne grant meeting around some of the technology ones, like, when we did all new Chromebooks for some, I can't remember, it was like one of the pods or something. I mean, there were discussions, and some people were like, I don't think this is appropriate use of the grant. So I mean, these are certain discussions that we have.
And in budget development times, the notion, just because the budget is always so tight in what's proposed, to have a budget come forward, to have a $77,000 item in the proposed budget for technology for this, it wouldn't last very long. Just because of the budget increases.
And I think that
we're up
becomes
against.
just more of a long-term planning issue, that
Sure.
maybe this isn't something that gets done in 12 months, but this gets something that is
Well,
7 years.
what you're pointing out is that if the town was to redesign their website, it would be a capital item.
Correct.
That would be $70,000.
Yeah.
For us, it's a FEFI's item, because even though it should be capital, it's hard for us to force it through capital because we get a limited exposure to that. We have so many needs for all of our buildings and everything we do. And we've used FEFI's largely for technology over the years to substitute for basically capital items that should be under.
I think it's also, this grant isn't competing with another grant that's clearly enrichment that we're not funding, but we were able to fund
Yep.
all the grants that, might be more true to the enrichment definition. So this is kind of, on top of it, we have money. I think it's a good use of it.
And is there going to be student involvement in the development or student input?
Yeah, they would be one of the stakeholders. And actually, I think they'll be pretty valuable. They know a lot of my experiences, they know what they really know about it.
But there's a list of the folks on that, correct?
That's a process question. So this came before the Payne Grant Committee and was not supported by the Payne Grant Committee.
Correct.
Are we even allowed to vote on it or recommend it, or do we have to reconvene the Payne Grant Committee to approve it? I don't believe we can support things if the Payne Grant Committee doesn't bring them forward. The Payne Grant Committee is supposed to be independent of the school committee.
Yep.
So the process is, so as we set it up, was superintendent proposes Payne grants. They're brought to, or he signs off on Payne grants that are brought forward to him. They're brought to the Payne Grant Committee, who recommends the ones to move forward. They're the first filter, and the school committee approves from there.
What would happen if they approved a grant and we denied it? We could-
Either way, if they
Yeah.
deny
So then
something,
why do
it doesn't
we
go through. If
vote?
we deny something, it doesn't go through.
Yeah, but historically, we've not funded portions of grants, and the school committee said, no, we're going to fund the whole grant. I don't know how that's necessarily different.
Recommendation, not a vote, we vote.
I just need to know the policy. It's a process piece. I'm for this. I just don't know if the process is the correct.
Well, can we check on the process, vote for it, confirm with the process? I believe the Payne Grant Committee recommends, and we decide.
Who would we check that with, the FEFs?
No,
Or
it's
our
policy.
the policy?
It's under the Payne Grant policy.
Isn't it on the website?
Yeah, it should be. Let's see if we can find it.
That's
There's
not-
another hit on the website.
Yeah. Suddenly there's 7 more hits on the website.
Damn it, can't find it.
It's gonna explode. They say quote era things brought to
Aubrey?
search.
Anybody remember which section it's in? remember which section it's
It's
in.
under staff resources. You go to the
DDA.
program,
It
and
doesn't.
it's the second link.
The policy doesn't.
What's the the letter?
You go to staff resources.
Okay.
She's on it.
I'm in the policy
We're
manual.
also under our direct.
Oh, okay. See, if our website were better designed, this would be more intuitive.
All right, so it says the committee meets during each grant cycle to review and evaluate all, oh, these are innovation grants.
Wouldn't it have been in our meeting file
There's a
for our
flow
last
sheet and
meeting?
everything else on-
Mm-hmm.
It says in the last paragraph, committee meets during each grant cycle to review and evaluate all enhancement grant applications, votes to approve qualifying requests, and then advances them to the Ipswich School Committee for final approval. It doesn't say anything about,
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, it's an and, not an or.
that would have been the old, that would have been the old language.
So this is rewritten, right?
Yeah, last year or year before.
We used to have little graphs like steps, like how do you go through. But it does seem to be a stepwise process.
I think if it needs to vote to approve qualifying requests, then it doesn't advance to the school committee.
Excuse me?
I read this as saying if the committee does not approve a qualifying request, then it does not advance to the school committee.
Yeah, that's my process question, or process concern.
About it.
Is that
Yeah, I think it was advanced. They
Heard about
just,
It was, they did not,
they voted it down?
yeah, they would.
but they still presented it to the school committee. So we shouldn't have even heard it.
Was it unanimously declined? Right.
Mhm.
So there's the rub. I do feel it's a process for a reason. Generally, I support this, so I just think policy is an issue we have to confront. So if we do feel this is important, maybe it has to be bounced back to the Payne Grant Committee for some sort of online discussion and meeting again. or
Reevaluation.
reconsideration. And that's really probably because it's really a superintendent-driven process, the Payne Grant. It's, in this type of situation, I assume it's up to you to ask that they reconsider with further information.
Mhm.
But a vote by us without their support, I don't think would be a good precedent.
We have precedent for it. We're just sort of now talking about it.
Introverse Weatherall.
No.
Right.
No, in Payne Grant, I mean,
Payne
we,
and Traverso Weather are all separate processes.
no, I know, but when I was on Payne Grant, we did vote down sections or part of, and then they come here for presentation in the school committee.
So Payne Grant voted
Yeah.
part of it.
Further
the school
brings it
committee
forward.
approved all of it.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's precedent for doing this.
Mhm.
But you didn't decline something entirely that the school committee was supposed to.
Gosh, I can't remember.
I don't recall any grants
There was an,
being declined.
the alignment, the vertical alignment grant 2 years ago
Yeah,
was voted down.
Yes, right. John and Kathy.
Yeah, but then I remember, do you remember the trackers grant with the gym class? And
Yep.
the grant committee said no to the trackers and the school
and
committee
then we
said,
approved it.
right,
Mhm.
Trackers
Can we
grant.
vote on
Whatever.
that?
The Trackers grant, was that a major? Was that a Payne?
That was the
Yeah.
gym one. Yeah, it was for the gym.
That was a Payne.
The part that the FEFIs objected to was the fact that everybody, it would be anonymous, but that everybody's information
Oh,
was
then we
projected
got
on the
information that
board.
it wasn't gonna be.
And they didn't want people to feel like they were being judged on their performance in gym classes. So
Just
the
seems
FEFIs
like a-
said no, and then we all said yes.
But I think because they came and explained it to us and said,
Yeah.
Mick came, or I don't know who came, not Gardner.
So this is exactly what's happening tonight.
Not really, because that was entirely knocked out because of that. This was only a part of it, or was it the whole thing?
That was the only part that was pulled out, and then the whole rest of it went through,
Yeah.
and I think we approved the whole thing. We put that back in. Okay.
So process, that's my concern.
Mm.
How can we vote on this and confirm that we follow the FEF's process?
The policy's not clear. I think they're
We can
gonna
ask Barry.
So having been in the room when the policy was written, it was a stepwise process. It was supposed to go. Superintendent approves all paying grants. They're usually the vision of the superintendent for the school district, with some support from other, people bringing things to it. Then it goes through the paying grant committee, which is supposedly independent, with lots of separate voices to determine primarily whether it's enhancement, because you couldn't fully trust the school committee to make that decision.
With the superintendent, apparently.
Because really, the real filter, the real filter in the process for enhancement, because school committees cheat on enhancement all the time. I haven't been on them. So, the question is, because we have our priorities that are important. So the idea was that the paying grant committee would look, carefully scrutinize the language on enhancement and not let non-enhancing things through. And then the school committee wouldn't have the opportunity to fund health insurance with FEs, which we did for years, or fund heating with FEs, which we did for years.
Can I make a motion to ask the superintendent to reconvene the paying grant committee for the purpose of reviewing this grant?
Mhm.
So what additional information are we gonna give?
What we just heard.
Keith shows up. and talks
Yeah.
to
So
them.
it's up, give them minutes of this meeting?
Yeah, but to them.
And are we still
Did you
in
say the same thing to them last time?
cycle that it needs to be approved by a certain date or calendar year? I know the money, at least for last year, was paid.
We've held grants aside for
Yeah.
further clarification.
Yeah.
And so clarification on policy should be fine as well.
So
I second that motion.
Okay, could you repeat the motion, please?
I move to have the superintendent reconvene the paying grant committee for review of this particular grant. With the
Reconsideration.
reconsideration with the additional information that we've heard here today and further discussion.
And it may not be additional, but it's additional that we're interested
Mhm.
With the idea towards more student involvement adding to the enhancement of the grant.
The $30,000 annual fee does that, doesn't it?
What's that?
The grant you're proposing is the website you're proposing is the portal-driven website. So that should cover that, right? Students can log into their Aspen account once this thing's up and running potentially.
If that's one of the business requirements, yes.
But they'll have input into designing that
Mhm.
and pitching that and.
But that was true the first time around.
It's I think you have a list of your stakeholders and
I'm pretty
students.
sure students are.
Students are in the
Yeah.
stakeholder list.
it. It has to be, or it's not going to get through.
Excuse me?
It has to be, pretty much,
Mhm.
because it's an enhancement.
Okay.
The Vice President of Science and Technology in my household is my youngest. Okay, motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of asking the paying grant committee to reconvene on this grant? All those opposed? 6-1.
Now,
You're opposed as well?
No, I was reluctantly in favor.
Now, if they decline to send it forward,
That's it.
Yep.
It's done. Yeah.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be. It's got to be. Reminds me of Epic.
Do we feel, as I think I'm going to be a member of the policy committee, this policy needs to be further?
You might want to look
Yeah.
back at the old
Fine.
policy,
Okay.
just to,
It's a little vague.
yeah, it might be just to re-examine it in the meantime. Maybe
Well, and I
at the
think
next meeting.
part of our working group or our next
Retreat.
meeting is
That's
a review
another-
of this, so it would probably be timely for us to then review the
Because if
policy.
this goes through, it's
To
gonna
your
be delayed
point,
by.
Dr. Flynn, the paying grant committee is supposed to, if that is in fact the case, then the paying grant committee is an independent body, and,
Oh, yeah.
and so, you know, it does prevent us from deciding, oh yeah, that's enhancement, that's enhancement, you know, and spending the money frivolously, so.
The biggest danger to the FEFIs is the FinCom. But outside of them, it's ourselves. It really is.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Keith.
By the way,
Thank you,
Keith,
Keith.
good presentation, and we favor it, I think, completely. I think it's just, it's important to get through that process.
That's fine. Thank you
We'll get
very
to it
much.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
I do not have the draft subcommittee list in my package. It's on the computer though.
Yep.
Yeah, you sent us a separate email.
Yeah. Hold on, I have to get to it. Here it is, John. Yeah. So in our subcommittee assignments are next. I tried to accommodate everybody's wishes, but I couldn't fulfill everyone's wishes. I have heard from Pav today
Oh, boy, he's
that
on
I know that
Netflix.
I know.
Jeff,
Yeah.
you asked to be on the pain grant committee, I believe, correct?
I do have interest in serving one of those committees, yes.
Right.
Go for it.
Right, and Pav saw that, and she's done it for 4 years, and she'd be happy to step down, and she'd also be happy to step up to our STEAM team that we were looking for a replacement, a person for.
And I also said, if you're interested in doing student advisory council for the high school, I think it's kind of silly for us to have 2 people on it.
Yeah.
And I did it last year, so if you want to do it this year,
So I think
it's interesting. I learned a lot.
I think we're getting closer to everybody's desires.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I have interest in student advisory council sometime soonish too.
So you can ask next. Did you ask this year as well?
I think I gave you like, I definitely want to be on this, and I'm fine to be on this.
Yes, right, right. He said definitely wanted to be on that, and I couldn't accommodate him. So if that's okay, we'll have Jeff do it this year, and maybe you next, or we can revisit it next year.
We're taking Bob off of Student Advisory Council?
We're taking Pav off the student advisory
I would be on
board,
the STEAM team.
and then putting Pav on STEAM team, and putting Jeff on pain, and Pav off of pain. She's already met it,
No.
right? Yeah, okay. Okay.
Well, that might apply immediately. You might be in the discussion. In the new one. Remember, it's all
Oh,
about
yeah.
enhancement.
You're a non-voting member. So,
It's enhancement, yeah, and by definition, you're non-voting.
but it's,
But your voice is
It's
powerful.
loud.
So you want to bring the will of the committee to some extent.
Okay, is there any other adjustments or discussions on this subcommittee working group list?
I'd love to do communications at some point.
Wow.
I mean, wow.
I ran for communications my entire
To athletics.
Yeah, that was one of the, I tried to accommodate you on almost everything. That was one I
No
put
worries.
forth, and we're,
I did communications for the first 3 or 4 years I was on it. It's like, I did great. It sucks.
Just caution folks about how many committees and subcommittees you sign up
Yeah,
for,
get Carl
because
Madden
we
syndrome.
run into issues of scheduling meetings then.
And well, you can always join our communications meeting anytime.
Oh.
We're happy to delegate.
I know, and I was constantly like, oh,
the
not
only
this
problem
month,
with that
not
is
this
that we have a
month.
quorum.
So,
No,
Right.
that's true. Never
So
mind.
you can come as a citizen.
Yeah, come as a citizen.
I want to just say that I'm not on budget. I've wanted to be on budget for the last 2 years. I think terming out would not be good to be on budget for me, but as the chair last year, I came to many budget meetings as a citizen. I tried to keep my comments down because I realized that I was not a member of that committee.
Mhm.
And, but it was really important for me to understand the work of the committee. So, you know, they are public meetings, so you come as a parent, and it's helpful. You don't get a lot of participation, but.
can I add, just because it came up, you're gonna go to the MASC meeting, this conference this year. I did do it virtually. It's fabulous. But just because with the pain grant issue as well, I remember it coming up during the MASC meeting where one of the voting members was supposed to be representing a school committee, but he went against what the school committee had voted for at that meeting. And I thought that was sort of an interesting, it was just an interesting turn of events, because I think in my take, that wasn't his role. He could have his personal member feelings, but
Correct.
his role was to act on behalf of his school committee.
Well, here he's
That's
not
why we
voting.
have,
No, I know, but that was an
At the MASC as a
interesting,
delegate, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing to watch as a newer school committee member, where I was like,
and that's why we have our norms
Right.
that say, once the committee votes, we act on behalf of the
Yep.
will of the committee. Thank you for your help with this, Laura. I sent her a pencil draft, so, photograph from my phone. Thank you. Is there any further comments on this list for the coming year? Okay, I'd like to vote the list, if that's okay. I don't know if you do that, but do we do that?
I think it's, you know, these are appointments by the chair.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's correct.
you can vote
We don't
yourself.
vote. We don't vote. But I did send it to you in draft form, so we'll go from draft to final form. Yep.
can I get you a description for the working group that still has working group description TBD?
On camera.
Does the top person?
Yes.
Does the top person in each category reflect the chair of that?
Nope.
sub-
No,
it
it
doesn't.
does not.
Committees choose their own chair.
It's voted every year.
Each group chooses their own chair.
Okay.
So you may be elected policy chair at the next policy subcommittee meeting.
So moved.
If you don't go to the first meeting, you will be.
Yes.
Yeah, you will.
Chair. That is what happens.
That's true.
Just as a,
If you're late, you find yourself chair.
Tough group.
Yeah.
not over to you.
Okay. So there we go. Are there any further questions on the list? Great, thank you. School committee meeting approval. I guess it's really important to concentrate on the first few meetings, but they can fluctuate and they can change. And I recognize that we need to be flexible. So if everyone's had a chance to review this list, is everyone okay with the first August, September, October-ish?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Big conflicts where we're not going to have a quorum?
No.
And frankly, we've been a committee that's always
First and third.
intentionally met,
Yeah.
so it's been great. So that's what I'd like to thank the committee for. Never had a hard time, I've never experienced not
Except-
being able to have a quorum.
Except for August and September, all of the other ones I think are the first and third Thursdays.
In April.
I'm sorry?
April.
In April, yeah. Vacations.
Yeah, when's February vacation this year? Must be the 19th, so it's late.
It is.
April,
That's not bad. We'll check that to make sure that we're in.
Well, I'm sure.
I'm sure this didn't go in conflict with.
I
February
checked it. It
vacation.
is the 19th to the 26th.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm a planner.
And budget meetings don't interact, aren't scheduled under school break.
What's that?
No,
Budget
never.
meetings are not
Nothing's ever
scheduled
scheduled
over-
over school breaks, pretty much.
Will we have the tri-board meetings again, or is that somehow unique to last
We're
year?
having a tri-board call Monday at 5, Chair Hall.
Okay.
Chair,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Monday at 5, we're going to discuss the need for a tri-board at that meeting. So, to be determined. There will be tri-board meetings. The strategic plan report has never been voted on and finalized. We've supported the draft,
yep.
but I think that's going to be coming right up, and then I would anticipate that coming before fall town meeting. All right. So this does need a vote. Let's entertain a
Move
motion.
to support.
Greg? Moved by Greg to support the meeting schedule calendar, and seconded by Kate. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to turn the meeting over to you for financial update. One last plug for Bill. It was great to have him as a replacement, and I hope he helped fill you in on the district.
He did, yeah.
It was some valuable time.
Yeah, I had some really good, valuable time with him before he left. He was great, really great. Great, kind of walking me through what he did, and a really good transition through June, which was nice. So then when I came here last week, officially, I could really kind of hit the ground running. So really thankful to be able to have that time with him, and he still offered to be a resource to me as I need it with questions, so which is really fantastic. So he was a great resource.
If we can get him off his motorcycle long enough.
Yeah.
I saw that a lot.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have any questions related to the financial documents that are submitted here today? It's the final wrap-up, is that correct?
We're done, yeah. FY21 is done. We put a period on that and moving
Any
on.
highlights to the closing of the year, any concerns or big numbers that you were worried about? Everything was pretty routine.
No, I mean, really, everything was pretty routine. No concerns there. I mean, we ended the year on positive results, so definitely happy to see that. And now we're onward with 22.
When does budget start to meet? Right.
When do we usually
September.
start?
September.
September,
Yeah.
October? But we got some planning to do this year.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question about the big bag of money the federal government's giving us? And when that comes, and what does it mean to us, and where do we have that slot?
Sure. So there's 3 tranches of the big old bag of money from the federal government. SR1, which I'm sure maybe Bill has talked to you about, that's fully spent and done, and actually we're at the point of starting our reporting. So SR1, we're at the point of reporting to the federal government how we spent that money. SR2, the plan has been pretty much all set up, and we're spending against that currently. And then SR3, there's kind of a baseline plan for how we're going to spend SR3, but that planning is still very much in the works. I don't think it's till October is when we actually submit the applications for SR3. So they're in kind of 3 different phases at this point.
And is there still some concern that the state may hold back some of the ESSER funds for their own purposes, or we already know exactly what?
We
we're
know
getting?
what we're getting from ESSER.
What do we get in each tranche, just to kind of about?
So ESSER 2, you received $532,467, and we actually just got the final funding for ESSER 3. That's $1,219,470.
And so the tentative plans around that, ESSER 2 is pretty well spoken for already, because if you recall, we knew that funding was coming, and so we included a lot of that in the budget process. We pulled things out of the budget and utilized ESSER 2 funding for that, as well as some additional positions and things. The ESSER 3, we have some tentative plans for. We're still looking at all the guardrails that come along with that money.
Including the timing, which goes out a
That's
couple
what I
of
was just gonna
years,
say,
right?
the timing is out a few years, it's not a one-year grant. I think we're gonna be into fiscal '24 before it ends. So we can be very strategic in how those funds are used. My main concern is that we're bringing on some positions to help us to close some gaps and to provide some additional services to kids, especially around mental health needs. And so I want to make sure that we have that funding for a couple of years, because at some point when that funding is, runs dry, we're not going to be able to maintain those positions necessarily in the budget. And so we're looking at all of those things to make sure that we're able to utilize the money in the best way possible.
So right now, ESSER 3 is under discussion as to how it will be budgeted. It's not budgeted for this coming budget year,
Correct.
but it is planned on being budgeted in the 23 and 24
Yes.
budget years.
Yep.
And we have to determine how to use, because it impacts our planning around overrides, et cetera, because if you have $1.2 million more on top of the money we've got, and how is that figured in? So that's the only other thing we have to think about in terms of how we plan to move forward.
I think that's
What
a
position
discussion
we put
that
ourselves in.
the discussion that the budget subcommittee has to have.
That's number one most important discussion,
Yeah.
the budget subcommittee. has to
Because
have.
you'll have 2.8 stabilization fund after this year.
And 1.2 in ESSER.
But the ESSER's, only allocated a certain amount.
I understand.
Right.
So is stabilization fund, it's only until we use it.
Right.
And I know, as the FinCom would say, money's fungible. You can shift it category to category. And short the FEFIs, which is only for enhancement, and it should not be considered part of the budget.
Right.
We have to think about how this is strategized, and how we're going to pitch the override.
And again, similar to the FEFI's funding, we have to safeguard that money to a certain degree, because it's easy to say we have 1.2.
Oh, yeah.
Here you go, category, group.
Yeah, I know. So, and we want to make sure we take care of the kids, because there are going to be a lot of challenges in this coming school year. That to have the opportunity to apply assets to that challenge is huge. It's a big, big thing, so we have to be able to do it. All right, thank you very much, and I appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
doing all this stuff.
Absolutely.
And you look forward to the next budget meeting.
That's right.
We really have some strategy to discuss.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 1.2 million is great, but it's a one-time infusion of 1.2 million. It doesn't
I was
really
thinking
solve
how
our
it
problems.
supports-
There's nothing worse than one-time money.
Right, so it's nothing to get too excited about.
Right, exactly.
So just for the record, in your package this evening was the worksheet on the revolving gift and stabilization accounts, as well as the end-of-year budget report.
So we only have 1.8, not 2.8, first thing. took 2-1 this year, correct?
Say that again?
We took 2-1 out of stabilization this year.
For this coming.
For this coming year, okay, yeah, all right.
And
So
so
you're thinking
there's
for
3-9,
FY '23 you're
6-5.
talking about,
So I said 2-8. There's actually 1-8 available for next year,
for FY '23.
which puts us in the negative.
Mhm.
We had 2-8 last year before we got the money in.
Do we see any special education requests that we're going over budget?
Not that we're aware of for that.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have like remediation teachers or special educators designed to do that?
We've got a couple of different positions that we included in the ESER 2 funding.
That'll be coming on board for the fall.
Counseling staff mainly, and particularly at the high school, middle high school level.
Do you think there's academic catch-up to do, or not so much? 'Cause we read a lot about that whole tutoring
Yeah,
idea.
so I think we'll get a better look at it in the fall, but I honestly think that the model that we were able to have the entire year, where even the kids that were in the hybrid model, on the days that they were home, they were still zooming into the classrooms, especially at the upper levels. So I'm actually less concerned about the level of learning loss that I think a lot of other districts have, where in other districts where the kids were only in 2 days a week or they were fully remote the entire year, I think they have bigger issues to be dealing with than we have. And so just in talking with some of the teachers here, will there be some learning loss? Absolutely. But I don't think it's to the degree that a lot of other places and what the national media conversation is. I don't think we're in that rough a shape.
Thank you.
It's hard to predict how long these additional positions will be needed for. I mean, is it just, this coming year to catch things
Yeah.
up, or will we want to be maintaining those positions?
Right.
I had a patient this week who was telling me that her son had started first grade this year, and I said, what was it like for him? And she said, she said he went 2 full days a week, and I just thought how lucky we were that we were able to get all of our pre-K through second, right? 4 days a week. I'm so grateful we were able to do that.
So there'll be a lot of review on that this year, right out of the gate in September to see what the needs are.
Are there any other questions for Cheryl? Thanks. Thanks, welcome on board. Dr. Blake,
Yes.
your administrative report,
Yes.
please.
So, a couple of things. Since our last meeting, I've managed to get some days off for vacation. This week I was at the superintendent's conference down in Falmouth from Monday night till this afternoon. My report will be brief as a result. For starters, I'm happy to report that all of our new administrators have successfully transitioned into the district. I've had the opportunity to spend considerable time with each of them, while allowing them all to get their feet under them and not be in their face every day. Tracy Wagner and Bev have also had ample time with them, and we all had our first leadership team meeting together in person last week. Looking forward to the coming year and seeing what we can accomplish together. I've also been working with the new EDP director and the staff to make sure that that program is up and running in the fall. Looking at some exciting changes to the program, sort of building on what Wilma had built up over the years. We're looking at bringing in a flag football program perhaps for the kids after school. We're trying to fulfill pieces of the Payne grant that was written last year to redesign that program, utilizing the new director to try to implement some of those things. So we're looking forward to seeing how that progresses in the fall. shape though. We're currently working on our PD for the fall, and Tracy and I had a video conference with our keynote speaker, Lynn Lyons, to set the stage for the day. And talking about mental health needs, she's talking about anxiety in students and being able to deal with anxiety, both from the staff perspective and the student perspective. So we're looking forward to that. I've also been meeting with Chris Race on a regular basis just to make sure that our summer projects and the capital projects are all underway and progressing on schedule. Chubb and I had a conversation with Mr. Muldoon regarding media coverage of the school district. It was a very productive discussion. And finally, for the last 3 days, as I said, I was at the MASS conference in Falmouth. I attended sessions with the MSBA to get their recent changes and updates as we start to think about another building project. There was a significant review this morning of school legal issues that are facing school districts and some of the recent court decisions that have come down. A session on moving forward from the pandemic, and several sessions and presentations and panel discussions on diversity, equity, inclusion. That's a big topic statewide. I know that MASC came out with a statement in their most recent newsletter. MASS is working on a piece as well, and DESE is doing a big piece on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So sort of everybody is involved in the conversation now, which is great to see. I anticipate that there's going to be some resources coming out of that that we'll be able to utilize and help guide the work. There was a lot of conversation around amongst the superintendents and folks from DESE that the importance of all being on the same page. So there should be one message going out about critical race theory when it comes to any of us, any superintendents. It shouldn't be everybody left to their own devices to try to explain it. So we really pushed hard to get a unified message that'll be shared throughout the Commonwealth, just to make things easier for individual school districts. And then just a lot of guidance and resources that DESE is already they're ready to launch. They just have to have it go live. We saw some draft copies of stuff over the last couple of days. So there'll be a lot available to us. The keynote speakers were Michael Smirkanish, who's a radio talk host, and his perspectives on the media and how the media really is controlling the conversation, and depending on what news station you're listening to. And he gave concrete examples about like how far apart I'll say the two sides really are, and how it's shifted from just reporting the facts on the news to a lot of spin on both sides, depending on your politics, and how that's causing many of the problems. And I don't think it's anything that anybody didn't know, but just to have it in a conversation and a presentation was very reassuring. So he's very well respected in the field, and to the point that he illustrated that in one day he guest hosted one of the radio shows on the far left in the morning, and guest hosted a radio show in the afternoon on the far right, because everybody views him as more centrist, and so he was able to guest host on both sides and really just keep things on an even keel, which I think was important and sadly lacking in any of the media today. And then the other keynote speaker was Sarah Lewis. She's an assistant professor of history of art and architecture and African American studies at Harvard. She specializes in the intersection of race, art, and culture. And so it was an interesting conversation presentation that she did around, different historical pictures and what the pictures mean and how they were cropped and how they, you know, the different events that were surrounding and how the photographers of the day captured images. So it was a pretty interesting conversation to have, and really enlightening about how again, a different media source has impact on what you see and what it means, what the underlying meaning of those pictures is. So really good. I'll be able to report out more on the individual sessions at a future meeting. As I said, I got back at 12:15 today, and we had a 1 o'clock meeting. So I haven't had much time to process any of it, but will in the future. And then the last piece is in the school committee, in policy each year, I need to provide the school committee just with a listing of the anticipated increases that I'm proposing for the administrators. And so I uploaded that earlier today. And it just pertains to the administrators that have been here, not any of the new administrators. So that's in your folder. Is it in there?
It's in there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is,
Yep.
yep.
It's the bottom.
Huh.
Here it is.
We really look at new business.
I'm sorry?
It's under new business.
It's in the new business, okay, new business. Okay.
Where, are we going on
I would,
that? Would like us to?
well, the policy, let me find the policy. The superintendent will make available to members of the committee each year documentation which shows the increases, if any, which he proposes to grant, subject to funding by the committee, and reasons and support thereof.
So I'll move to support the proposed increases.
Second.
Moved by Greg, second by Kate. Is there any discussion, further discussion?
Do we have the reasons or?
They all got the same increase this year. I didn't differentiate between them. It's all the same percentage increase. And I think, you know, given this unusual year, there's two pieces to it. One, given the unusual year, I struggle, and personally I struggle with merit increases on a team anyway.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you introduce pure merit increases, oh, you get this, but you get that, the whole team, group work, collaboration goes right down the tubes. So,
Is there any further questions? All right. It's been moved by Greg and seconded by Kate. No further discussion, we'll go to the vote. This might be a roll call vote. Laura?
I don't think so.
no,
No?
no.
All right. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Blake.
Thank you.
School committee retreat topics. We've got three that we talked about them at the last meeting. I've got three, and be happy to discuss all of them. Two are goal oriented, and one's a larger FEFI's discussion. And for goals, it would be nice to talk our school committee goals. And we heard I heard you last meeting, Emily, about maybe moving the superintendent preliminary goal discussion out of operations and to the full school committee. I think that's a good idea and an excellent retreat topic. It's not, actually these goals are great team building practices as well. And then thirdly, I want to turn the discussion over to you, Greg, to Chuck Feffy's.
Mm-hmm.
We've just finished a Feffy's policy overview in the last few 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But there still continues to be news out of the trust. This year we have actually used our total grant request.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a wealth of riches with the trust, with the principal going up and up.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that gravy train doesn't last forever.
No, we hope, but no,
So,
not likely.
So,
Yeah, you know, my thought, I mentioned it to Chubb, I think just, you know, back when the whole Feffy's Trust was created in 2012, no one really knew how this whole process would work, and there was, I think the policies were created to be very conservative because it was such a new thing, you know, you had half the people wanted to keep it as a real estate trust and just generate rental income from it, other people wanted to do what's been done and put it in an investment pool, but no one knew how it would work out. So I think just, you know, a general discussion about the policies as they exist now, what the money can be used for, how do we define enrichment and enhancement, doing this in light of the fact that the trust continues to grow at a pretty significant rate after the distributions come out each year. So it's been 10 years, so I think it's worth kind of revisiting some of these things.
Big fan.
Yeah.
Can we also discuss, as part of that, kind of making sure that we are getting sufficient applications? Are there things we need to do to encourage administrators or teachers to apply more
Mhm.
or better communication? Or do we think we're getting plenty of applications?
Yeah.
Or we're getting repeat applications in this small group?
My biggest fear is, at some point we run out of ideas that are, there's so many, we'll always have ideas, but, as these distributions get larger,
Right.
we don't want to be returning money every year,
Right.
Can we talk about, I don't want to say marketing, but I think listening to the grants every year and the Traverso Weatherall grants as well it's so inspiring. At least it's definitely been my favorite thing, and being on Payne Grant. But I'd love if we did a better job of, again, probably not on the website because it's a carriage and buggy. But it would be kind of nice to, either through the newsletter or whatever, really get that out there more to parents, because I really think our teachers shine, our administrators shine, our district shines in these grants, as much as our,
I think there
football
was,
team shined this year. And
a few years ago, I think there
our
was a
symphony.
grant showcase out here,
There
wasn't
was,
there?
yeah.
And that was like a
It was
one-year thing.
phenomenal.
Yeah, we should do more of that.
Yeah, because it's really, just to, I don't know, you just
We're
feel
very
so
unique.
lucky.
We're
Yeah.
a unique district, and we should.
Yeah, you certainly hear that when you go to the MASC conference.
Yep.
And they always reference Ipswich in the
Mhm.
Feffy's. It's a national, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to see if we can push that forward a little bit more.
I'd like to see us also, from the school committee perspective, we hear so much about the Payne grants. We don't hear enough about the Traverso Weatherall.
Yep.
So I'd like to early
Okay.
in September have a agenda item,
Yep.
be a presentation by the chair.
It's a great idea.
Jen Spencer,
Yeah,
correct?
Jen
Yeah.
Spencer.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
have her come in.
Yep.
So that could be a way to push some of that onto.
Yep.
Other retreat topics?
That's a lot.
I have a question. We, in past, before the pandemic, we sometimes had somebody come from the MASC or
Facilitate.
something to present to us or do a team building exercise or something. Are we considering something like that this year or?
I thought we had a lot to discuss this year,
Mhm.
because for example, a school committee goal for me is to build back build back the programs that we lost,
Okay.
and retain the treasures that we've uncovered this year. And that's a pretty good-sized discussion around, that's just one goal, and I'm hopeful that the rest of the committee has more goals. So I really think we've got a lot of business work to talk about, and not so much team building, unless you all think that we are in need of that.
What was even team building? I mean, I'm team building. I don't know if I think we did that one year, but they've done different topics and different. So
We
I
did
was just,
roles, we did,
Yeah.
Roles and responsibilities, we had
Yeah.
MASC come in
and
So-
give us, and she was happy to come in last year, but it was all reopening all the time.
Right.
we do have a lot going on anyway. That's the only thing that came to mind for me. I have found them interesting in the past.
I do, I know.
I mean, maybe it's something we could think about for next year or the year after, given that so much of committees freaking new.
We can also have it as an agenda topic,
Well, Yeah.
in the not too distant future, to
that's
have
true.
MASC come in. Because
Okay.
now we're having people come, I mean, we have
I'll talk
time.
afterwards.
Real people. Getting closer.
Better.
Okay. Does anyone have any other retreat topics they want to discuss? It's
That's
goal.
good. Yeah,
It's
that's good.
goal
Yeah.
setting, Steffi's this year.
Mhm.
Okay. And thank you, Dr. O'Flynn, for the location.
Oh, no worries. That's easy. No
Very,
worries.
very appreciative.
There are lots of nice places in Ipswich. It's just a nice
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Oh, wait, there's still more meeting. Excuse me. Vouchers and bills.
All set.
No subcommittees met, no working groups met, no liaison. Oh, actually, there are a couple liaison meetings. So it was an IEF meeting. And
I was on vacation,
That's
so I
right.
had nothing to
You were-
report.
you
I
were
think
in
I
Maine.
worked when I was on vacation as well.
Okay,
Somehow they managed without us.
Yeah.
okay. Okay, is there any new business? If there's no other further liaisons or subcommittees, is there any new business?
I don't know if this is really new business, it might be back to subcommittees, but did you have any luck reaching out to the select board, so for now related to
We did, for the school, we met at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
the chair?
And Greg, Dr. Blake and I, as well as Tony Marino, Tammy Jones, and Louis Retman, we discussed bringing
Possibilities.
possibilities of bringing the site forward.
Good, I just want to make sure that was kind of.
Yeah, we can connect to it. Okay, consent agenda. Do we have a consent agenda in here, Laura?
There is.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, total backup. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the open session meeting minutes from June 24th, 2021. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve a refund regrant check in the amount of $6,000 from First Robotics to be deposited into the high school gifts account and earmarked for the robotics team.
So
Second.
Second?
Mhm.
Second by Bob. All those in favor? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Ipswich. See you
Yeah.
live next time.
Mics are probably still hot.
It's nice not to have to worry about our voices being muffled.